Hey, hi all. Welcome back to PR Knowledge Center. In this today's session, we'll talk about what is an exception, right? How we are going to handle exceptions in .NET. Okay, so exceptions and .NET exception handling. Okay, so this is what today's topic is. Okay, when it comes to the title like exceptions, right? So what is an exception? So when it comes to definition of exception is an unexpected event that is going to occur during the program execution. Okay, so that means when you start executing of your program, if anything unexpectedly happening, right? Maybe connectivity to the database, or getting of value with the expected kind of range, and it is going to perform some like unexpected result set and going to divide with zero, or getting of value from out of or index out of boundary, or referring a value from the object without instantiating. So there are many cases there may be a chances of getting an exception while you executing a program. Okay, because this is purely belonging to our runtime process. At the compile time, you cannot expect what kind of exceptions are going to be happen, right? Come into the picture to execute a program. So hence, we are going to understand like what is an exception and how many type of exceptions we may have, then how to handle these exceptions to get rid of the program execution stops. Okay, so let me define an exception, right? An exception is an unexpected event, right? Unexpected event that occurs during the program execution. So any program, right, when you are executing, right, it is going to throw an event when there is an exception happens while the processing of your program. Okay, so a C sharp exception, a C sharp, right, exception is a response to an exceptional circumstances that arises, okay, while a program is running, right? Such as identify, such as like an attempt to divide by zero. One of the well-known example, an attempt to divide by zero. This is definitely going to give a problem, right? Let us say like when I'm going to do this operation, so I'm going to get an exception saying that it is undivided, right? It is a divided by zero exception is going to happen. Okay, let us see in the simple Visual Studio program for more understanding. Suppose I'm having a equal to 10, right? And I'm going to define a equal to 10 and int b equal to 20, then, and I'll say, right, int sum equal to, right, a plus b. That's fine so far. And now when I say console.writeLine, it is going to print my sum. Understood? Now when I'm executing it, it is going to give me an output of 30. But when it becomes 0, right? Now see what it will happens when you execute a program, right? So when it is going to execute this is just giving, right, sum of two numbers 10. That's fine. Now I'll do this as division, right? Divide, right? That means A divide B. Okay. So when I run this, so what will happen is it is going to throw you an exception saying that attempted to divide by a zero. This is what a system exception it is happening here, because you're trying to divide by zero, which is not correct in this case, which is not allowed to divide by zero. That's how it is throwing an exception. And when you are not handling exceptions properly, it is going to close your program. That's what the problem with the exceptions happening during program execution. Okay. So exceptions provided a way to transfer, right, control from one part of program to another part of program in the C sharp. Okay. Let me go back to our class notes. So exceptions provides a way to, right, transfer control from one part of program to another part. Okay, so C sharp exception handling is, right, built upon four four keywords. One is try, right, and then catch, and then finally, sorry, in between return we have a throw, and this is the finally. So these are the keywords, right? The C sharp exception is going to build on these keywords to handle, right, the exception handling in C sharp. Try, catch, right, and throw finally. These are the four keywords we are going to use to implement exception handling. Understood? So an exception is an event, right, or a kind of an unexpected event which is going to execute while you executing a program, right? The C sharp exception is a response to the unexpected event, right? To the experiment or no exceptional circumstances that arises while a program is running on. So by example, so like attempt to divide by zero. If you look at this, so when I do a division with zero, right, this is going to throw you exception saying that attempt, right, to divide by zero. Okay, so when an exception is coming out, the program execution is suddenly stopping and coming out. It won't process the next lines of code, or it won't execute, right, further program parts. To handle this, we are going to do exception handling in the C Sharp.NET. The C Sharp.NET come up with the four keywords. That means four sections here. Try, catch, throw. Finally, using these, we are going to handle the exceptions. Okay. When you talk about try, right? So a program, basically a try block contains or identifies a try block identifies a block of statements for which a particular exception is activated, for which a particular exceptions is activated, right? This try block contains a block of statements, a block of code for which a particular exceptions, right, is activated. Okay, so it is followed by one or more catch blocks. It is followed by one or more catch blocks. That means you can specify more than one catch blocks. Now come to catch. Okay, so this is basically a kind of program which will catches an exception with an exception handler at the place in the program where you want to handle the problem. So the catch keyword indicates the catching of an exception, right? Catch keyword indicates the catching of, right, catching of exceptions, catching of an exceptions. Make it be clear. Okay, and coming to the final keyword, right, in between we have anyway like throw, right? The throw keyword basically using it for throwing an exception message from one position to another position, right? And coming to the finally block, right, is used to, right, execute a given set of statements, right, whether an exception is thrown or not thrown, whether the exception is thrown or not. It's not matter of exception is occurring or not, right? It always executes the block of code when you mentioned in the finally block. If you open a file, it must be closed whether, right, an exception is erased or not, right? If you open a file, simple example, if you open a file, right, it must be closed, right, whether an exception arised or not, right? So this kind of logic we are going to mention in the finally block. Okay, let us see an example for these keywords and understand more on this. So I'm going to take same example here, right? And what I'll do is I'll keep this entire stuff in try catch block, right? So I'm going to keep this entire stuff instead of my try catch block. So try is following with catch, right? And here I'm going to have finally block. So instead of catch block, right, I'm going to define this as ex exception. So basically, I'm going to use a built-in keyword here, exception, which holds all system exceptions and application exceptions, right? When exception occurs, I'm going to say right line of this, and then I'm going to keep this statement here in the finally. So as I said, irrespective of exception, right, this line of code is executing. When it is properly executing, it is coming here and printing, and then it is executing. When there is an exception occurs, it coming here, and also it is going to execute this statement. When you run this, it is going to display the exception saying that system divided by zero exception, that is attempted to divide by zero is happened, and so on, so line like this. And then it is executing my finally block statement. If you want, you can write it here, statement executing from catch block, catch block, right? And here I'm going to say executing from finally block. Now you run this, now exception occurred, hence it is no printing first, and then this is the exception, and then this is executing from finally block. Now when I hit the enter, it is going to stop my program. A sample program, right, to demonstrate like how to handle block of code going to throw in exceptions while running a program. Okay, so when it comes to the exception handling, right, we are going to use four keywords, but here I used only three keywords. And the throw exception or throw keyword, right, I'm going to explain it in, right, when you create user defined exceptions. That means, like, say I have a method here. Let me do that. So I have a method here, int division, right? It is taking two numbers, understood? And instead of this, I'm going to return a by b. What happened? B could not be used. Okay, so this way I'm going to return. Okay, now instead of doing this stuff, right, I'm going to call this method instead of, right, division of a comma b. Understood? So to call this anyway, you have to create a instance, right? Program obj equal to new program and obj dot division. This way I'm calling it. So I'm coming here, this line of code I'm going to put it in the try catch block. I'm going to keep this statement here, right, and followed with exception of e, right. Here I'm saying e, that means I'm throwing exception to here. Understood? Let me tell you an example. Let me show you example how it is running. So it is coming here, right? Because you call division. It is throwing an exception, come here. And here I'm just throwing an exception to the calling area exception block, right? Now here executing from catch block, and here you can see how it is going to execute, right? It is going to execute, right? Let me, right? It is going to execute the problem is occurred in division method, and then it's thrown to a main method. So you can see the stack source, like like from where it is being called and from where it is coming out, everything it is going to print using, right, exception e dot toString, so that it is going to give you the clear picture from where the exception is coming here. Basically, exception occurred here, and I thrown this exception to my main method, right? So these cases we are going to use throw exception. If you want to throw it to main method, and here if you want to print it, you can throw using throw keyword. Understood? Yeah. So this is something keyword we are going to use this, right? Throwing exception from one part of program to another part of program. Okay. So this is all about exception handling with the basic keywords. Understood? And now let me show you there is some hierarchy how the exceptions are coming out. If you look at my diagram, right? This is where my diagram is having it, right? So here the first class is an object, okay? The first class is an object, which means from here, that is system.object is a namespace. From here, this exception class is deriving. From the exception, we have two exceptions, right? We have two exceptions. See here clearly. So I have two exceptions here. One is system exception and another one is application exception. This is the hierarchy of exception handling in C Sharp. So exception is dividing into system exception and application exception. Application system exception again divided into external exception and COM exceptions. External exceptions, right? Again, when you integrate any external assemblies or any COM assemblies, then these are going to belonging to external exceptions or COM exceptions. And inside of this we have, right? So aggregate exception, argument exception, divide by zero exception, null reference, overflow exception. These are different exceptions, right? And if you're referring an a kind of argument which is not in the parameter function, then it is going to throw an exception. When you're doing a division by zero, you are going to get this. When you're referring an object without having any instantiation, then it is going to occur. When you are getting or assigning a value to the variable which is not able to allocate a memory, then you will then you will get overflow exception, right? So, and again, our argument exception comes into argument null exception, argument out of range exceptions. So this is basically system exceptions. And coming to the application exception, this is going to basically happens for your applications, right? And whenever you execute a program, right? Sometimes you miss a variable, sometimes you miss a method, but you're trying to execute that, then the application is going to throw you exception. Please make sure that error is different, exception is different. So errors are unexpected issues that may be arise during computer program execution, but exceptions are unexpected events that may arise during the runtime. These are events, the error is an issue. Errors cannot be handled, exceptions can be handled using try-catch mechanism. Okay, all errors are exceptions. All exceptions are not errors. Understood? Okay, so here looking at divide by zero, it occurs when the user attempts to divide by zero, and out of memory exception it occurs when then the program tries to use excessive memory. Index out of bound exception occur and an array element accessing index which is not present in the in it. Stack overflow exception again comes when you mainly this is due to an infinite recursion process. And null reference occurs when a user attempts to reference an object which is not a null type. So there are a couple of system exceptions having it. Okay. So what is the need of exception handling basically? What is the need of exception handling in the C#.NET? Need of exception handling. This we need to understand first of all. Right. Exception handling in C# is a process to handle runtime errors. Understood? So we perform exception handling so that normal flow of the application can be maintained even after runtime error occurred. Right? To get rid of now stopping and killing off your program execution in between, like when you have a problem with exceptions, then we'll use exception handling. In C sharp, exception is an event or an object which is thrown at runtime. All exceptions derived from system.object. Okay, so exception handling in C sharp, exceptions handling, right, in C sharp, right, is a process to handle runtime errors. Runtime errors. So we perform exception handling so that the normal flow, right? So that the normal flow of program can be maintained even after runtime errors. Okay. So in C sharp, the catch keyword is used to define an exception handler. If no exception handler for a given exception is present, the program stops execution with an error message, right? So we always need to catch the exception and then we have to showcase the customized message for the end user. That's the need of exception handling. If you're not handling an exception, it's going to end up with a problem that program is going to stop suddenly and close your application. Okay, this is something about a basic introduction part to the exception handling. Like in the next coming session, we'll see like how we are going to throw an exception, right, and how we are going to create custom exception if required as part of this exception handling. Okay, thanks for listening to this video and please subscribe this channel for more videos. Thank you.